They don't need designer logos or flashy colors. Yet every time they walk into a room, something shifts. People notice, energy moves, and attention is drawn without a single word being spoken. This isn't about fashion, it's about energy. The way certain individuals dress isn't random, it's strategic, intentional, and energetically aligned. In Feng Shui, we talk about how space affects flow, where mirrors go, where plants sit, how corners hold or release chai. But most people forget that the body itself is a space, and clothing is the outermost layer of its energy field. What you wear either amplifies your personal field or disrupts it. This video is not about following trends or building a wardrobe to impress others. It's about understanding how fabric, fit, and form shape the way life responds to you. Energy doesn't stop at your skin. It travels through cotton, wool, silk, metal, and color. Your clothes are the first vibration the world feels from you. And while most people dress from habit, those who carry presence dress with clarity. They know certain cuts constrict chi, certain colors dull presence, and some garments silently broadcast confusion or hesitation. In the next few minutes, we'll uncover why powerful people avoid specific clothing choices, not because of brand or money, but because of how those choices affect focus, movement, and the ability to attract what matters. This insight isn't just rooted in style, it's grounded in the energetic logic of Feng Shui, balance, flow, and purposeful design. Before we dive into these patterns and how to adjust them, I ask for a moment of support. If you find this message valuable, if it sparks something inside you or feels like something the world needs more of, please help this channel reach 2,000 followers by tapping like, hitting subscribe, or sharing this with someone whose energy deserves to be seen. Every gesture helps expand the space of wisdom and clarity. Now let's explore the hidden messages in your wardrobe and how letting go of the wrong pieces may bring in exactly the right opportunities. Mistake 1. Why ill-fitting clothing disrupts a shirt that pulls at your shoulders. A pair of pants that sag just enough to make you adjust them throughout the day. A blazer that looks sharp but makes it hard to breathe when you sit down. Most people think these are just fashion inconveniences, small, forgettable flaws in the way clothes fit our bodies. But the truth is, these details are not minor. They are silent disruptions. They pull on more than fabric. They pull on energy. The way your clothes fit affects the way your energy flows. In Feng Shui, flow is everything. You move a chair an inch to the left, and suddenly the whole room feels lighter. You open a window and the air feels clearer. But while most people understand how to shift energy in their living space, they forget that their body is a space too. And the clothing that wraps around it, it's either supporting that space or choking it. Today on New Day Mindfulness, we're going to explore a truth that wealthy, influential, and energetically grounded people live by. Poorly fitting clothes don't just make you look uncomfortable. They make your life move less smoothly. There's a reason why those at the might take tailoring seriously. And it's not about style, it's about strategy, alignment, flow. But before we step into the details, I want to take a moment to thank you for being here. If this kind of content helps you shift how you think, feel, and show up in the world, even just a little, then I invite you to help me grow this community. A simple like, one click to subscribe or sharing this video with someone who's on their own journey of refinement can help us reach the next milestone, 2,000 subscribers. Every gesture helps this channel bring deeper, more thoughtful energy into a noisy digital world. And for that, I'm truly grateful. Now let's talk about fit, because this, what touches your skin every day, is not about style trends or body image. This is about energetic architecture. Imagine your body like the floor plan of a well-designed room. When furniture is too big, it blocks the doorways. When it's too small, the space feels cold and underused. That imbalance creates energetic friction. You feel off, even if you don't know why. The same thing happens when you wear clothes that are too tight. They restrict movement, breath, and circulation. They signal to your body that it's under pressure, that space is limited. Emotionally, that translates to guardedness. You hold yourself differently. You tense your shoulders. You shrink slightly, even without meaning to. And oversized clothes, while they may offer comfort, they often do so by erasing your outline. The world reads that as hesitation, withdrawal, or self-protection. You may feel hidden, but in energetic terms, you've dimmed your presence. You've sent the signal, I'm not fully here. When your clothing doesn't fit, your energy doesn't settle. It adapts, it compensates, it gets tired faster. And in a world that demands clarity, presence, and confidence, that internal dissonance can cost more than comfort. It can cost you opportunities, alignment, and momentum. On the other hand, well-fitting clothing creates energetic symmetry. It doesn't cling or collapse, it rests. It follows the natural lines of your form. It allows breath to move easily, shoulders to relax, and posture to align. When you wear something that fits well, your nervous system settles. You stop adjusting, you stop fidgeting, you focus, you speak more directly. You enter a room and feel, without needing to prove it, that you belong there. This is why many highly respected individuals across industries invest in tailoring, not as a luxury, but as a discipline. Because tailoring isn't about ego, it's about refinement. It's about removing the noise, the drag, the friction, and leaving behind only ease. You don't need custom suits to live this principle. You just need discernment. Pay attention to how you feel and what you wear. Does your shirt make you take deeper breaths, or does it make you hold tension in your chest? Do your pants let you walk with ease, or do they cause you to tug at them every few minutes? Is your jacket giving you structure, or are you constantly pushing the sleeves up, trying to get comfortable? These small cues are the body's way of telling you where energy is stuck. And energy that's stuck, even in the tiniest ways, accumulates. A misaligned collar might seem like nothing, but if it makes you self-conscious all day, that energy compounds into hesitation, into distraction, into self-doubt. Energy leaks aren't always dramatic. Often they're just quiet, lingering, unnoticed, until they shape your week, your month, your presence. So as we move deeper into this video, I invite you to let go of the idea that fit is a shallow concern. It's not. It's one of the most immediate ways we can honor the body we live in and the message we send into the world. Because whether we realize it or not, we are all in a constant dialogue with our environment. And our clothing? That's the first line of that dialogue. Coming up, we'll break down the energetic differences between tight fit restriction, loose fit avoidance, and what true alignment in clothing really feels like. We'll explore simple ways to refine your wardrobe without spending more, so that your outfits match your path, not just your size. Stay with me, because this part of the journey isn't about looking good. It's about moving better, feeling clearer, and stepping forward with energy that fits you perfectly. Mistake 2, consistency breeds magnetism, the Feng Shui of a signature look. In the same way that Feng Shui emphasizes consistent design elements to create harmony within a space, personal style functions as an energetic blueprint for the individual. Consistency in how one dresses is not about monotony. It's about stability, clarity, and intentional repetition. When someone maintains a coherent visual presence day after day, they're doing more than curating their wardrobe. They're reinforcing a recognizable energetic frequency that builds trust, continuity, and authority. In a world overloaded with options, shifting appearances too frequently can create subtle confusion, both for the wearer and for those around them. This inconsistency sends a message that the internal foundation is still in flux, that the person has not yet committed to a stable sense of self. And whether consciously or not, others feel that. Just like walking into a home where every room is painted a different color can feel jarring or disjointed, meeting someone who constantly reinvents their look can disrupt the flow of connection. It doesn't mean that experimentation is wrong or that people shouldn't evolve, but it does mean that when one is always reinventing their outer appearance, it may reflect a deeper lack of energetic grounding. Personal style, when consistent, becomes a signature frequency, a recognizable, energetic tone that others associate with reliability, clarity, and presence. This is especially important in leadership, influence, and high-stakes environments, where being perceived as focused and stable can determine whether opportunities open or close. Repetition of certain style elements, such as preferred color palettes, silhouettes, or materials, serves as a visual anchor. It allows energy to stabilize around the person wearing them, much like a recurring mantra stabilizes the mind during meditation. And just like a home with cohesive furniture placement and color rhythm feels more relaxing and navigable, a person with a consistent style feels easier to read, remember, and relate to. This is why many successful individuals, even in creative fields, adopt what appears to be a uniform, not out of laziness, but out of refinement. By removing the noise of daily aesthetic decisions, they protect their mental energy for more significant creative or strategic challenges. This principle, while often misunderstood, reveals a deeper truth about energy management. Every choice requires focus. Every change introduces variability. And variability, when unbounded, leads to fragmentation. A signature look, therefore, isn't a limitation. It's a filter. It eliminates friction. It helps others know what to expect. And energetically, it tells the universe, I am coherent. I know what I carry. I am directing my attention with precision. In practical terms, this might mean selecting 2 or 3 dominant colors that reflect your current energetic goals. Navy for strategy, charcoal for maturity, white for clarity, or deep green for growth. It might mean choosing silhouettes that support your natural movement or communicate a consistent message, such as structure, ease, authority, or openness. It might even mean simplifying your wardrobe to a few trusted pieces that feel like second skin, not because they're trendy, but because they've become part of your energetic identity. Consider how high-level professionals often rely on the same jackets, shoes, or combinations, not as a statement of luxury, but as a statement of presence. These items act like energetic signatures, silently reinforcing their intention and focus. One of the most cited examples of this in modern times is the repetitive gray t-shirt worn by a prominent tech leader, not as a branding gimmick, but as a cognitive discipline. He explained that reducing decision fatigue allowed him to concentrate on problems that truly mattered. But beyond psychology, this consistency became a kind of energetic armor. It projected intention. It removed noise. And over time, it built a public image that was associated with clarity, logic, and stability. That's the power of energetic repetition. People may forget what someone wore yesterday, but they remember the feeling that person consistently brought into the room. Style that fluctuates without center becomes a distraction. Style that returns to its essence becomes magnetic. In Feng Shui, we do not redesign the layout of a home every week. We establish core elements, then adjust details slowly and mindfully over time. The same principle applies here. Once your core visual language is set, once your personal style aligns with your direction, then minor variations become meaningful rather than chaotic. They signal evolution rather than indecision. For those seeking to become more energetically grounded, the first step is not to buy something new. It's to ask, what is the frequency I want to broadcast? What emotional state do I want to stabilize in myself and reflect to the world? Then the task becomes finding garments that match that frequency and repeating them, not mindlessly, but intentionally. Over time, this repetition becomes part of your energetic field. People associate you with a certain mood, a certain presence, a certain level of reliability. And in energetic terms, that's how magnetism is built. Not through excess, but through refinement. Not through novelty, but through alignment. Because energy doesn't just respond to what's beautiful. It responds to what's stable, coherent, and clear. When your style supports that clarity, everything around you begins to adjust accordingly. People trust you more. Opportunities move faster. Attention lasts longer. And all of that starts with a decision not about what to wear, but about who you're becoming and how willing you are to dress in a way that lets that version of you lead the way. In the end, the signature look is not a costume. It's a channel, a tuned frequency that makes your energy easier to feel, your presence easier to remember, and your impact harder to ignore. Mistake 3, texture and quality over flash and brand. In Feng Shui, every material holds elemental resonance, meaning that the texture and substance of what you wear is not just a tactile experience, but an energetic statement. This concept extends far beyond design aesthetics. It's not about dressing in a particular style, and it certainly has nothing to do with flashy logos or trend-driven choices. The fabrics we wrap around our bodies each day operate as subtle, energetic tools. When chosen with care and consciousness, they support clarity, focus, stability, and growth. When chosen based solely on fashion or convenience, they can create scattered, uneven energy that subtly disrupts mood, direction, and even how others perceive you. Natural fibers have long been revered across both ancient traditions and modern energetic disciplines for their ability to ground, balance, and amplify aligned intention. Wool and silk, for example, are closely tied to the earth element. In energetic terms, earth is about nourishment, consistency, and reliability. Wool provides a warming, anchoring quality that feels supportive, especially in colder environments or periods of instability. Silk, by contrast, though still linked to earth, carries a smoother, more refined vibration. It glides rather than hugs, supports without pressing. It evokes elegance without noise. Silk energy is often associated with quiet influence and poised receptivity. It protects without creating distance. Wearing high-quality silk garments, even in minimal doses like a scarf or lining, introduces subtle grace and inner assurance that others register, even if only subconsciously. Linen belongs to the wood element, which in Feng Shui represents growth, renewal, and forward momentum. It breathes, it stretches slightly, it ages well. Linen is ideal for those in transition, career shifts, personal evolution, healing phases. Its rougher texture carries a vibration of movement, reminding the body and energy field to remain open and adaptive. Those who are building or rebuilding often benefit from having linen integrated into their wardrobe, especially during warmer months. It invites clarity and gently pushes stagnant energy outward, supporting mental freshness and emotional honesty. Metal, while not a fabric, shows up in details: buckles, buttons, cufflinks, eyewear frames, zippers, and hardware on bags. In Feng Shui, metal governs focus, precision, and logic. This element is sharp, efficient, and mentally oriented. Including polished metal in small doses, especially in intentional placements, such as near the collar, wrists, or ankles, can sharpen one's energy. A simple pair of silver-framed glasses or a minimal metal ring, when chosen with clarity, can act as energetic punctuation. It says, I make decisions, I cut through noise, but it's essential that this metal is not overused or clashing. Too much metal, especially when mixed with erratic patterns, can make the energy feel cold, distant, or hyper-analytical. Balance is everything. On the other end of the spectrum, synthetic materials, particularly those with excessive shine or stiffness, are often linked with unstable or erratic energy. These fabrics are typically infused with artificial dyes, petrochemical fibers, and treated finishes. While they may look bold or edgy in the short term, they rarely allow for a grounded presence. They can make movement feel unnatural, restrict breath, flow, or spark friction with the skin. Energetically, this friction translates to a choppy or unstable field. People may perceive it as charisma in flashes, but it rarely sustains connection. Wearing too much synthetic shine is like filling a sacred space with mirrors and neon lights. Attractive for a moment, overwhelming soon after, and ultimately exhausting. Flash in this sense is the opposite of depth. Building a wardrobe based on elemental textures does not require enormous budgets or access to designer labels. It requires awareness. It requires noticing how a fabric makes your body feel, not just how it looks. Does it breathe with you or trap you? Does it stretch with your gestures or resist them? Does it make you feel solid or inflated? Hot or calm? Dull or bright? Every texture sends a message to your nervous system. And the nervous system shapes not just how we feel internally, but how we behave externally. A linen shirt might make you speak with more ease. A wool blazer might help you feel more contained. A sharp metal accessory might give your posture a quiet edge. These micro adjustments compound over time. And from an energetic standpoint, they build frequency. That frequency becomes your signature, your presence, your magnetism. Choosing texture and quality over visual shock allows your energy to arrive before your appearance is even fully seen. It allows you to leave an impression of coherence, grace, and subtle power, rather than shouting for attention through unnatural materials that reflect light but not truth. Another key reason quality matters. High-integrity materials age better. They evolve with you. A well-made wool coat doesn't fall apart in one season. A quality leather belt holds its form and narrative year after year. Just as Feng Shui encourages investment in timeless furniture pieces that remain relevant across life chapters, clothing built from natural, quality materials grows with you. It adjusts to your changing body, your evolving identity, and your maturing energy. These items become allies, not decorations. Clothing that carries earth, wood, and metal in balance helps support both internal resilience and external respect. This is especially important in contexts of leadership, relationship building, or long-term strategy. The energy you wear should reflect the life you are cultivating, not just the moment you are in. If you're building a business, managing a team, healing a major life wound, or calling in a new chapter, your clothing's material choices are not trivial. They are frequency tools. Investing in texture means investing in how you hold yourself. It means treating your body as the sacred vessel that it is, not with reverence that feels heavy, but with clarity that feels empowering. The next time you shop, or even before you walk out the door, take a quiet scan of your outfit. Are you wearing breathability, stability, precision, growth? Or are you wrapped in something that's shouting louder than you want to be heard? The goal is not to avoid all synthetic materials forever. It's to become fluent in what different textures do to your field, to choose intentionally, to dress not just for style or season, but for alignment. Because once your wardrobe begins to mirror the elements you wish to embody, life responds in kind. People notice more calmly. You feel more at home in your own skin, and your presence quietly, powerfully, starts to carry the weight of truth. Not flash, not noise, just energy that fits, that flows, that lasts. Mistake 4. Shoes represent direction. Why wealthy people pay attention to footwear? Shoes are one of the most underestimated pieces in the energetic wardrobe, and yet in Feng Shui, they carry significant weight. The feet represent movement, direction, and our ongoing journey through life, which means the condition of our shoes, whether cared for or neglected, is more than just a fashion choice. It's a mirror of how consciously we walk through the world. Footwear speaks not only to style, but to intention, readiness, and momentum. When someone wears shoes that are clean, well-kept, and chosen with care, they send a message to both themselves and their environment. I know where I'm going, and I'm prepared to arrive with purpose. Conversely, when shoes are broken down, dirty, or overly worn, it signals blocked energy, delayed progress, and sometimes a subtle sense of resignation. People often overlook this, thinking that what's on the feet is the least visible part of an outfit, but in energy work, the bottom matters just as much as the top. Your feet connect you to the earth. Your shoes are the interface between your body and the path you walk, quite literally carrying you into your future. When that interface is neglected, frayed, or misaligned, it affects not just posture or gait, it alters mindset. Shoes that are too tight create subtle irritation. Shoes that are too loose generate instability. Both are distractions, pulling awareness away from the present moment and toward discomfort. This undermines confidence and makes one less grounded, both physically and energetically. In practical terms, this might show up as fidgeting, shifting weight while speaking, walking cautiously, or feeling tired faster throughout the day. Over time, that adds up to misaligned energy, missed signals, lost presence, and decisions made from a place of hesitation rather than clarity. Wealthy people and high-level performers understand this at an intuitive level. They may not articulate it in Feng Shui terms, but their behavior reflects it. They invest in shoes not only because of quality or brand, but because they recognize that every step counts. Each movement is an energetic signature, a directional choice. Even in moments of rest, the way a person's feet are placed, the weight of their shoes, and their readiness to stand up and act speaks volumes. Someone who walks into a meeting with polished, structured shoes signals preparation and respect for the space they're entering. Someone who shows up in worn-out sneakers, dragging their heels, or visibly uncomfortable in their own footwear, projects indecision or disengagement, even if their words say otherwise. The subconscious impression has already been made. This is not about wearing expensive shoes, it's about maintaining what you wear with care and choosing items that support your path, not sabotage it. Shoes are directional. They should point toward where you want to go, not where you have been stuck. This is especially important in key life transitions. Starting a new job, ending a relationship, moving cities, launching a business. During such times, investing in a pair of shoes that feel solid, comfortable, and aligned with your vision can serve as a symbolic reset. It tells your body and your energy field, I am stepping into something new. I am walking with intention. One pair of shoes cannot change your life, but the energy you place into that decision can. When people say dress for the life you want, they often think about suits, dresses, or accessories. But the wiser version of that advice begins at your feet. Because if your shoes say you're tired, overwhelmed, or indifferent, the rest of your look won't matter. It's like designing a beautiful house on a cracked foundation. Eventually, the instability shows. In Feng Shui, we clear clutter to let energy move freely. Shoes that are caked with dirt, shoved under the bed, or stacked haphazardly in piles near the door carry stagnant, blocked energy. They send a daily message of chaos or delay. When you clean, organize, and respect your shoes, even simply placing them neatly, you are reinforcing the energy of progress. You are honoring your path. You are saying, I walk with purpose, and that matters. The act of cleaning your shoes regularly, polishing leather, brushing suede, or even simply wiping down soles becomes a subtle ritual of honoring where you've been and preparing for where you're going. This level of mindfulness, though small, sharpens presence and restores momentum. It's not vanity, it's energetic alignment. Choosing shoes that match the activity is also part of this wisdom. Wearing formal shoes to casual events or casual shoes to formal environments can make the energy feel mismatched. It subtly throws off the dynamic between you and your surroundings. The same way you wouldn't place a delicate porcelain vase outside on a windy patio, your footwear should reflect the terrain, literal and metaphorical, that you're navigating. Comfort is often mistaken for laziness, but in truth, comfort equals clarity. When the body is comfortable, the mind is free to focus. When the feet are supported, the spine aligns. When the walk feels light, decisions are made faster. That is why those who value performance, presence, and purpose choose their shoes with such intention. They know that their steps, every single one, carry the energy of what comes next. And that energy deserves the right foundation. So whether you wear flats, boots, heels, loafers, sneakers, or sandals, the deeper question remains the same. Do these shoes help me move toward the version of myself I'm building? Do they reflect where I want to go, or are they dragging behind who I used to be? Keep them clean, replace what's broken, choose based on alignment, not trend. Honor the ground you walk on, and it will support you back. Because in the end, progress doesn't begin when you reach the destination. It begins the moment you decide to walk like you belong there. And every step, visible or not, tells the world who you are becoming. Mistake 5. Color is a compass. What wealthy people know about color psychology. Color is one of the most immediate yet underestimated forms of communication. And in both Feng Shui and energetic psychology, it functions as a compass, not just reflecting internal states, but actively influencing direction, perception, and outcome. Every color carries a frequency, and that frequency interacts with the human energy field in real time. In Feng Shui, colors are mapped to the 5 elements: water, wood, fire, earth, and metal, each associated with specific qualities, emotions, and energetic intentions. Understanding how to align your wardrobe with these elemental associations allows you to dress not just with taste, but with tactical awareness. Wealthy individuals, whether they consciously subscribe to energetic principles or not, tend to gravitate toward colors that match their personal goals in the industries they navigate. For example, navy and charcoal gray are not just professional, they are deeply tied to the water element, which represents strategic power, adaptability, and long-range thinking. These colors are frequently seen in financial districts, legal institutions, and high-level negotiations because they evoke trust, discretion, and a calm but forceful presence. Water energy is about depth, and when a person wears navy or charcoal, they appear thoughtful, controlled, and future-focused. These colors don't shout, they steer. They influence quietly and deliberately. Green, by contrast, is the color of the wood element, which is connected to growth, renewal, and upward momentum. Entrepreneurs, educators, and those working in innovation or health often benefit from wearing green tones, as they signal expansion, fresh thinking, and balance between action and reflection. A forest green dress or a sage-tone blazer isn't just fashionable. It nourishes the frequency of evolution. It tells the room, I bring life, I create movement. I invite new beginnings. This makes green especially useful in interviews, first meetings, or when entering new environments where adaptability and personal development are key. Red represents the fire element, and in energetic terms, it's the color of action, passion, visibility, and drive. It accelerates outcomes. It draws the eye. It energizes the field around it. When used with intention, Red can ignite charisma and authority, ideal for presentations, negotiations, or events where visibility matters. However, too much red can overwhelm or even agitate. It's a color that commands space, so placement and tone are essential. A crimson tie, a scarlet blouse, or even a deep wine-colored pair of shoes can activate this fire frequency without overpowering the room. The key is using red as a signal, not as a scream. Yellow and ochre tones fall under the earth element, which supports grounding, stability, nourishment, and trustworthiness. These colors radiate warmth and reliability. People who wear mustard, amber, beige, or golden tones often appear more approachable and dependable. Earth tones make others feel safe, which is why they're common in wellness spaces, client-facing roles, and support-based professions. A sand-colored sweater or ochre scarf doesn't just make you look soft, it energetically invites connection. These are powerful tools when your intention is to create harmony, reduce tension, or build long-term relationships. Finally, white, silver, and metallic shades are aligned with the metal element, which governs precision, structure, and clarity. These tones are often used in settings where decisions are made quickly, communication must be sharp, or environments require high levels of discipline and focus. Metallic elements in accessories, frames, or accents serve as visual cues of order and mental sharpness. A silver watch, a clean white shirt, or a platinum-toned jacket doesn't just appear sleek. It signals that the wearer values clarity and control. These colors refine the energy around them, removing clutter both visually and emotionally. In high-stakes environments like tech leadership, scientific presentations, or legal advisory roles, metal-based tones can reinforce authority and intellectual dominance. Beyond each element's qualities, successful people often tailor their daily palette according to the energy they need to channel, not the energy they currently feel. This is an important distinction. When tired, they may choose red not to reflect their fatigue, but to push through it. When stepping into a space of uncertainty, they might lean toward navy to project calm control, even if internally they feel unsettled. This form of energetic compensation is deeply effective because it allows the color to initiate the emotional state, not just echo it. In practice, one does not need to dress in full blocks of color to channel these energies. Strategic placement matters. A tie, scarf, blouse lining, sock, or nail polish can all serve as energetic levers. When building a wardrobe through the lens of color as compass, begin by identifying which elemental energies support your current chapter. Are you expanding and need growth? Then increase greens. Are you stepping into visibility or leadership? Introduce red accents. Are you reorganizing your life or business structure? Anchor with metallic tones or crisp whites. Are you seeking trust, stability, or relationship building? Earth tones will serve you. Are you entering spaces where perception and strategic thinking are vital? Return to navy and charcoal to align with water's frequency. It is also worth noting that color fatigue is real. Wearing the same tone daily without rebalancing the field can lead to energetic stagnation. A person who wears all black every day may eventually feel emotionally heavy or restricted. Someone who wears constant red may experience burnout or overstimulation. Just as Feng Shui advises periodic shifts to maintain energetic freshness in a room, the same principle applies to personal appearance. Rotate your palette with intention. Think of it as seasonal alignment. Spring invites wood, greens, teals, fresh blues. Summer thrives in fire, reds, corals, bright golds. Late summer and early autumn suit earth, beiges, ochres, and soft yellows. Metal tones shine in early winter. Crisp whites, silvers, structured blacks. Deep winter resonates with water, navy, charcoal, ink blues. When your wardrobe moves with these cycles, your body and energy field respond with greater resilience and fluidity. Successful individuals may not consciously reference these systems, but the alignment is visible in their choices. The head of a financial firm rarely appears in lime green. A yoga teacher doesn't usually show up in full gray pinstripes. There is an intuitive coherence that emerges when color meets context. That coherence creates trust, predictability, and emotional ease for both the wearer and the people they engage with. Color is also a powerful mood regulator. If you wake feeling indecisive, wear blue to ground your thoughts. If you feel invisible, a touch of red brings energy to your field. If you're preparing for negotiation, earth tones steady the voice and body. If you're feeling too open and need boundaries, black and charcoal seal the edges. If you're overwhelmed and need to refine your message, white and silver cut through noise. Learning to work with color this way is not about fashion. It's about subtle, energetic engineering. It gives you agency over how you show up, how others feel around you, and how the environment responds to your presence. Ultimately, color is less about being seen and more about being felt. Those who understand that dress not just to look good, but to move energy in the direction of their intention. And when your intention and your appearance are in harmony, the results don't just improve, they multiply. Because the world doesn't just respond to how you look, it responds to how you align. And color, used consciously, makes that alignment visible, tangible, and quietly magnetic. Mistake 6, accessories or energy amplifiers. Accessories are often dismissed as decorative extras, but in the energetic framework informed by Feng Shui, they function more like tuning forks than embellishments. They don't just complete an outfit, they enhance, sharpen, or soften the energetic field of the wearer. The principle isn't about how much you wear, it's about what each piece contributes to your presence. An accessory should act as an amplifier, not a distraction. One well-chosen object can hold more influence than a dozen mismatched elements. Energy does not respond to quantity, it responds to clarity. A signature accessory, whether it's a pendant, a ring, a bracelet, a timepiece, or a pair of glasses, becomes an extension of your frequency. It speaks for you before you speak. It offers continuity and symbolism. And when worn with intention, it not only enhances your energy, but also helps stabilize it. The item itself doesn't have to be expensive or loud. It just needs to carry meaning. This could be a family heirloom, a gifted bracelet that reminds you of a core value, or even a minimal necklace chosen to represent balance, clarity, or strength. What matters is not the brand or material, but the energy embedded in its use. Objects worn close to the body absorb and project frequency, and when you wear something with daily consistency, that frequency integrates into your field. It becomes part of your signature. People begin to associate that item with you, not just visually, but energetically. That's why intentional minimalism is more powerful than accidental abundance. Over-accessorizing splits energy. It creates too many focal points, too many vibrations, too much noise. The observer, and sometimes the wearer, doesn't know where to focus. This scatters presence, reducing impact. The most magnetic people rarely wear a lot, but what they do wear has weight, not physically, but symbolically. A single ring on one hand may communicate more confidence than a full hand of stacked jewelry. A clean, structured watch might say more about someone's relationship to time, responsibility, and precision than 3 necklaces of mixed symbolism. The language of accessories is quiet but potent. Sharp, metallic accents like stainless steel frames, angular cufflinks, geometric earrings, or edged brooches resonate with the metal element. This element is about discernment, decision-making, and clarity. People who need to establish authority, sharpen their leadership, or enhance mental sharpness can benefit from accessories with clean lines, cool tones, and minimal shapes. These pieces communicate that you are precise, organized, and not to be underestimated. They function like energetic exclamation points. Rounded shapes, natural textures, or earth-tone materials like leather bands, wooden beads, ceramic pendants, or smooth stones resonate with the earth element. These bring warmth, steadiness, and relational depth. They support those in nurturing roles, creative work, or transitional periods where grounding and stability are essential. Worn with intention, such accessories soften the field, invite trust, and signal calm authority. They're especially effective in settings where approachability and emotional intelligence matter more than dominance or sharpness. Even the placement of accessories has energetic implications. Items worn on the left side, earrings, bracelets, rings, often correspond to receiving energy, while those worn on the right side symbolize output or giving. A meaningful ring on the left hand may help reinforce boundaries or openness to emotional support. A pendant worn close to the heart activates the center of intention and compassion. An anklet, though subtle, can reinforce connection to movement, pace, and grounded progression. Small decisions become layers of meaning. People who wear the same item daily are, in effect, practicing energetic branding. Their field becomes anchored, their identity more legible. Think of a person who always wears a particular necklace or whose signature look includes a bold pair of glasses. Over time, these objects are no longer just visual, they become part of how the person is felt. There's consistency, memory, and resonance. This is also why rotating accessories too often can dilute presence. When every day brings a new set of earrings, scarf, brooch, bracelet, or bag, the frequency becomes unpredictable. While variation can be useful during transitional periods, for someone trying to establish stability, authority, or brand clarity, less is often more. A simple rule is to start with one intentional piece. Ask yourself, what object best represents my energy right now? Is it something bold that speaks of visibility? Something soft that helps me slow down? Something balanced that keeps me centered in uncertainty? Once identified, commit to that item as a core piece, not forever, but long enough to feel it integrate into your field. Let it be a reminder, a mirror, a lighthouse. When the time comes for evolution, change it consciously. Retire the piece with gratitude. Introduce the next item with clarity. That process itself becomes an act of energetic refinement. Choosing an accessory is not about aesthetics, it's about message and memory. A bracelet picked up during a solo journey may hold resilience. A pendant from a family member may carry lineage and quiet strength. A leather belt that has aged with you may say more about your discipline and journey than a brand new bag ever could. In Feng Shui, objects hold memory. So do accessories. That memory becomes part of your field every time you wear the item. Treat your accessories as energy tools. Clean them not just for hygiene, but to reset the energy they hold. Store them mindfully. Rotate them with purpose. And most importantly, let them support your message, not drown it. When worn well, an accessory doesn't just finish an outfit, it clarifies it. It directs attention, it stabilizes your frequency, it reminds you of what matters. It protects your energy from scattering. It helps you feel not just more polished, but more present. So the next time you reach for an accessory, pause and ask, does this amplify who I am becoming? Does it carry meaning? Does it sharpen or soften what I need to express? Choose with clarity, wear with intention, and let the smallest piece say the most. Because sometimes the strongest presence in the room isn't the loudest voice or the boldest look. It's a quiet signal worn close to the body that resonates with undeniable truth. The Beyoncé detail. And in the world of high visibility and constant scrutiny, true influence is rarely built on volume or extravagance. It's built on calibration. The most magnetic individuals are those who understand the subtle geometry of presence. They don't rely on maximalism or trend to be noticed. Instead, they manipulate detail with surgical precision, turning small choices into energetic amplifiers. Among those who consistently demonstrate this mastery is Beyoncé, whose presence often transcends her surroundings, even when she enters a room in something as simple as jeans and a t-shirt. What separates her from someone else in the same clothes is not the label, the color, or the cut. It's the precision of detail and the way those details are orchestrated to carry silent command. Whether it's a pair of sharply structured boots, angular sunglasses, or earrings that frame her face like punctuation marks, there is always a deliberate element acting as an anchor. These elements are not decoration. They are frequency tools. They act as tuning forks, subtly aligning her energy to the message she intends to deliver without saying a word. In energetic terms, this is the art of anchoring. Anchoring is the process of placing a strong, clear signal into your personal field, a signal that directs energy, focus, and perception. A bold accessory like a metal cuff or structured handbag placed at the hip, it communicates groundedness and control. A high collar or strong shoulder pad reinforces authority and decision-making. A boot with weight and lift telegraphs momentum and determination. These are not arbitrary choices. They are intentional tools in the architecture of presence. Beyoncé's stylists are often praised for their aesthetic genius, but the deeper truth is that they build a visual strategy that supports her energetic field. Even in rehearsal footage or backstage moments, the details never vanish. They may be more muted, but they're still there, framing her essence, reinforcing her direction. The psychology behind this is powerful. When an individual wears a piece that holds weight, not just physically, but symbolically, it affects their posture, their gait, their tone of voice. It reminds them of what they're carrying, what they've stepped into, and who they've decided to be in that moment. That shift in embodiment changes everything. It changes how others read them, how opportunities respond, and how the room reorganizes itself around their presence. This is the silent currency of attention. It doesn't need to shout, it just needs to be consistent and intentional. In practice, this can be applied by anyone. It's not about having access to custom designers or rare couture. It's about choosing one detail in your look, whether it's a sharply cut blazer, a signature necklace, or a structured handbag, that becomes your energetic stabilizer. It's the piece that says, I'm anchored. It holds your field together when the environment gets noisy. It tells your nervous system, I'm safe, I'm clear, I'm ready. When Beyoncé walks across the stage, even in stillness, the energy moves with her. That's not magic. That's muscle memory. That's the repetition of using detail as a form of energetic training. Over time, your system begins to respond to these objects with conditioned alignment. It's no different than an athlete tying their shoes before a game or a monk lighting incense before meditation. It's about creating a point of entry, a symbol that transitions you into your higher self. The detail becomes a switch. When repeated consistently, that detail gains power. People begin to associate it with your presence. Your mind begins to associate it with your performance, and your energy begins to behave accordingly. The effectiveness of this approach lies in contrast. In a world where most people rely on excess to be seen, those who understand the power of restraint and subtlety command attention without asking for it. Beyoncé does not wear 15 accessories at once. She wears one that matters. That singularity cuts through noise. It makes the detail stand out, and it makes her entire presence feel intentional. This is why some people walk into a room and, without speaking, shift the entire temperature. It's not luck, it's the result of consistent anchoring through high-impact choices. The goal is not to become a celebrity or mimic someone else's look. The goal is to study the underlying energy strategy and apply it to your own life. What detail can you wear that reminds you of your own power? What item helps you hold your spine straighter, your gaze steadier, your breath deeper? For some, it might be a pair of shoes that makes them feel like they're stepping into new ground. For others, it could be a jacket that frames their shoulders like armor. It could be a watch, a scarf, or a belt that carries the memory of a breakthrough moment. When that item is chosen with clarity, it becomes part of your energetic language. And language, when repeated, becomes identity. The next time you dress, don't ask only what looks good. Ask what reinforces your field. Ask what aligns your energies with the outcome you want to experience. Choose one detail that does the work of 10. Let that detail do the heavy lifting, not your words, not your volume. Presence is not about how much you wear. It's about how well you wear your energy. And that always begins with attention to detail. Not for others, for yourself. Because when you anchor your frequency with care, you don't have to ask for attention. It arrives silently, steadily, unmistakably. Final, the most powerful wardrobe isn't the one hanging on display. It's the one built quietly, layer by layer, through intention, clarity, and congruence. It doesn't rely on labels or trends or the approval of others. Instead, it reflects a deeper truth. That what we choose to wear each day isn't just fabric, it's frequency. And that frequency is either supporting the person we're becoming or quietly reinforcing the version we're trying to outgrow. In Feng Shui, your closet isn't just a storage space. It's a map of your momentum. Every piece you keep, every item you reach for, every detail you repeat, it's all a reflection of the direction you're walking. And when that reflection is misaligned, when you're dressing for who you used to be or for a life you no longer want, it creates a ripple of dissonance that shows up everywhere. In your mood, in your confidence, in the way people respond to you. But when you dress from clarity, when every piece in your closet speaks the same language as your goals, you move through the world with less friction. You make decisions faster. You breathe deeper. You speak more honestly. Because you're no longer wearing a disguise. You're wearing direction. This is the invisible wardrobe. It doesn't try to impress. It resonates. It doesn't change with trends. It evolves with purpose. And when your energy matches your intention, your presence becomes undeniable. Not loud, not aggressive, just real, just magnetic. So before you choose your next outfit, ask yourself something deeper than, does this look good? Ask, is this aligned with the future I'm building? Ask, does this feel like me, not just who I am today, but who I'm becoming? Because true elegance isn't about what you wear. It's about how much of your truth walks into the room with you. And if this video gave you a new perspective on clothing, if it helped you see style not as status but as energy, I invite you to share it with someone you care about. Leave a comment below and tell me, what's one item in your closet that truly feels like your next chapter? And if you haven't already, I warmly invite you to subscribe to New Day Mindfulness. Every like, every follow brings us closer to 2,000 subscribers and allows me to continue sharing more grounded, intentional, and empowering content with you. Thank you for spending this time with me today. May your wardrobe and your energy always reflect the clarity of who you are becoming.